VCR, a vintage cinema rewind. We're bringing old movies to new viewers. I'm Blake.
I'm Jason.
And I'm still not Jason.
Hey, it's Mike, again on the podcast. First time ever, 3 people on VCR.
We're doing our first three-way discussion.
Yes.
About 3 movies each.
Yes, the movie draft, the great movie draft of 2022, talking old movies with old friends. I'm so excited to do this. This has been on the docket for about a month and a half now. We picked our our categories about a month. We'll talk about those in a sec. And since then, we've been kind of selecting those 3 movies each. I have literally no idea what either of you have done. I'm not going to lie. The last month and a half, I apologize to anybody that's had to listen to me talk about movies, because you two are the 2 that I like talking about movies with the most. And everybody else has had to listen to my ideas about these 3 movies, and it's been killing me not being able to talk about these.
I've had to talk Jess out of leaving you several times. Several different times.
I don't believe it. Or I do believe it, sorry.
Cocky.
First, we should probably talk briefly what each one of us got. So I have directors.
I have genre.
And I got the wild card.
Yeah, the exciting one. We'll see what you did. So that's all we know about the movies we picked. We don't know any more than that. We just had to fit into the theme of that. I think pre-podcast here, each of us have been kind of making guesses as to where we ended up with these 3. So I think we can probably guess right now what each of us picked. And then once we've announced what that is, I think we'll take a stab at the 3 movies that each of us picked.
I want to guess that Mike did something to do with, like, book turned into a movie.
That's a really good guess.
Ooh, that is a good guess.
Really good guess.
All right. My guess for you for the wild card is anti-hero movies.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I just
not
want
the genre.
I just want to cards on the table. Those are both 2 significantly better choices than what I ended up going with.
All right, Jason's. Who has genre? I'm really stuck between 2 because I think you could have gone either way on these, knowing what movies that you generally like. I think you might have gone either ancient action movie or crime thriller. And I'm not 100% sure on that. You were trickier than Mike was to guess.
What do you mean by ancient action?
Like historical?
Like Lawrence of Arabia kind of style,
okay.
or maybe a little bit more into like the ancient or fantasy kind of genre, like wading into like Conan kind of deal.
Like
yeah.
Like antiquity.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All right, you guys got guesses for me for director?
So your category is genre, and you made
director.
Director. You made a comment that it might surprise you what you went with.
Yes.
So my guess would have been probably something like John Carpenter.
Yeah.
Or something like
that. That would have been a good guess.
Maybe even Ridley Scott.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, it might surprise you. I want to say almost like Wes Anderson or like Paul Thomas Anderson.
Interesting.
That's the tough part, because I think we've gone through quite a few directors, and we're always talking about, like, each episode we talk about the director, and you're like, oh, I have so many movies that I want to see from this person.
Yeah.
So I don't even have a guess. Like,
honestly,
totally
you're probably better to have not had a guess at which director I picked, because it is not a director. I've seen one of their movies previously.
It's Mel Gibson.
Yeah. We were talking about Mel Gibson previously, but not Mel. All right, so we've made our guesses. Jason drafted first, then me, then Mike. So we can either do same order or we do reverse, I think.
I would do same.
I'm
all right,
fine with that.
so
you did guess fairly close to correct. I went with crime.
Yes! I knew it!
Yeah, so there were so many movies to choose from, and like that type of movie, it sort of fits with one of my choices, but I did go, like, I wanted to do something close to like the progression of this genre.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's hard to do with only 3 movies.
Oh yeah,
and like there's so many great decades to choose from and that's kind of how I separated them. Because like I picked 3 movies that I wanted to do, and they were all in the 70s. I was like, I gotta split this up.
You know
just
what? Not to interrupt you, I encountered kind of a similar problem with my pick.
Yeah.
Very interesting hearing that. I was kind of similarish in decade as well. I mean, director, you're going to have that, with an asterisk on that, maybe with some directors like Steven Spielberg obviously having a long career.
Yeah.
but a lot of directors, it's almost like musicians as well. You know, like you have your chunk of time where you're very creative, and then after that, maybe you lose that creative spark.
Yeah, I wanted to go crime. It's one of the best and like the longest lived kind of genres.
Yeah.
Yes.
There were so many ways I could have went, and like just to speak to the other genres, like I really wanted to do a time travel genre.
Cool.
And like that was it's a little specific and less, I think,
Like a subgenre, basically.
yeah, and it's less like spread out over time. I think where the you have to watch movies are, or
Right.
like the ones that made the genre.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to go that way, but I ran out of time picking and everything. But yeah. So there's so many classics in crime, like Goodfellas,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
The Godfather, like all of the gangster movies. So
Yeah.
I actually didn't go gangster because of that.
Oh, interesting. I was starting to write down my guesses as to your 3 movies, and The Godfather and Goodfellas, I literally just wrote down before you said that.
Yeah. So like part of this podcast is like trying to get people to see new movies that they haven't
Yes.
seen, new old movies, but like all of those we've kind of discussed. Like
Yeah.
we relate
Thief.
to them. Yeah, Thief especially. Like everybody has been recommended to watch Goodfellas and like Godfather.
Oh, easily. I myself personally have probably watched Goodfellas with half a dozen people and talked about it with like countless others about how great of a movie it is.
I mean, even if you haven't seen either of those, they've been parodied so many times
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you've almost
exactly.
just picked it up through osmosis.
It's like that's like our whole Jaws thing. Like we didn't watch it because we had like our generation had heard and seen all of the parodies. Of it.
right.
Yeah.
But then we
Right.
watch it and we're like, damn, that was good. So,
Yeah.
anyways, I went in sort of a different direction, and I picked some awesome directors that 2 are huge. The other one not so well known. I'm not sure how much else to go into this
I think
before
that
anyone
like
guesses.
that's probably a good amount at this point. So we'll move into me next. So I had directors, and honestly, I don't know if I was quite excited about this one to go because I thought it was almost too easy. Like, obviously, the minute I picked that, I was like Quentin Tarantino, John Carpenter, Stanley Kubrick. That's my Mount Rushmore of directors.
You
My
need
3
one more.
Probably like Steven Spielberg or something
Okay,
at that
okay.
point.
There we go.
So I was like, oh, those are my fallback options. You guys know me, like I'm probably like borderline a little neurotic. Like when I do something, I want to do it as best as I can. I put the research in, and I do a lot of work into stuff. So like
Sometimes to your detriment.
absolutely. Like I have a spreadsheet here of directors, and so I started with 24 directors that I thought, after reading like lists and lists and lists of best directors of all time, directors that I'd be really interested in. I looked at movies that I'd be really interested in, and then like backtracked into directors like that. From there, I narrowed it down to 6. But as always, like some of my fallbacks here, one thing that I thought of was doing Quentin Tarantino, but only doing one of his movies and 2 of his inspiration films. But
okay.
I thought that was too close to Wildcard, so I didn't go
yeah.
with that. The next one that I went or thought about doing was maybe some exploitation films, and that's why I've kind of been talking about those with you guys lately.
You have. You have.
And so I did watch a few to test the waters because they're really interesting movies. I love them as a concept. I love the fact that they were made in the period of time that they were
I
made
almost
in.
watched one for crime.
Nice. That's awesome. I felt like it was too close to genre, and that's where like I didn't want to tread into your side of things as well. So I spent all this time looking at directors, and there was one name in all of these director lists that I kept kind of stumbling upon. And he had one movie that I was like, I know exactly that movie. I saw it when I was 16. I saw it at school, actually, for the first time. Blew me away. It was a black and white movie. And so it was surprising because he wasn't familiar to me, but he seemed to end up on a lot of top director lists.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it a foreign director?
No.
Okay, so he's American.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm even going to tell you what his most famous movie is because I don't even think you're going to know his name based on
I
that.
just Googled just to see, because I'm trying to remember movies we watched in high school. To
Yep.
Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh.
Did I guess right?
No.
No.
12 Angry
okay.
Men.
So that was...
There it is.
Ah.
I was going to ask you to. Have either of you seen 12 Angry Men?
That was on my list for potential for crime, but
Awesome.
because it was courtroom drama,
Yes.
it was too much out of crime. Like, it wasn't about the crime. It was, but
Yeah,
I
it's-
almost went with that.
That's Henry Fonda's big starring role.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Exactly.
Wait, let me see if I can guess the director.
Okay,
'cause I'm-
while you're thinking about that for a sec, like, I do want to say 12 Angry Men, this director's first feature film ever made. It's one of, I think it's top 4 greatest films of all
It
time.
is,
yeah.
I saw it when I was 16 years old in law class. Blew my mind. It was probably the first full black and white film I'd ever seen, and it was phenomenal. Like, that's the most distinct memory of that class that I have from like 15 years ago almost now.
Yeah.
Can either of you name the director?
This is gonna be wrong, but I almost want to say like John Ford.
No.
Okay.
All
Who is
right.
it?
The name of the director is Sidney Lumet.
Never heard of him.
No.
I
Never
love
heard
it.
of
I
him.
love this.
Oh, wow.
I'm so excited about this. One of the most prolific directors of the second half of the 20th century. Made nearly a movie a year for 50 years. He has a filmography in 50 years of about, I think it's 49 movies.
Say that name again.
Sidney Lumet.
Wow. Okay. No, never heard of the.
Nominated countless times for Academy Awards. Never won one as Best Director, but did win some Best Screenplay, some other stuff like that. All of these films actually nominated or won an Academy Award at some point. And known as the actor's director. A lot of prominent actors had starring roles in his film, and he was there. A lot of them actually stated that he was their favorite, or they were their favorite director to work with. He would take the approach of like, you know what, like, you have this idea, your character's motivation is this or that, or like something like that, and he would run with it, and they would work together on stuff like
So
that.
he wasn't like a Kubrick.
No,
behind the camera.
and so he was known for elevating actors' performances and getting the best out of the best actors.
Wow. Okay,
and so
that's fun.
that's where I went with this. I was really excited reading all about this because I'm like, this is like
That's the
these
perfect
are,
one.
It's
Yeah.
perfect. I
You
nailed
picked
it.
it.
I think
Yeah,
I already
you
won the
nailed it.
draft, but
He may just have won the draft.
but we'll see. We'll see. I've got some really great movies. I'm really excited to talk about. I can almost guarantee that neither of you have heard of any one of them.
Awesome.
But
pretty
let's
fair.
move into Wildcard right now, Mike.
So you guys invited me on the podcast a few weeks ago. We drew straws or something, and I got wild card, which is the category you really wanted.
I was really excited about it. Yeah.
So I wasn't really sure what to do at first. At first, I wanted to do movies about making movies, and that's when I started looking in Date and a Half. But then you were like, "Hey, you need to pick a movie for next week," and I went, "Fuck!" So I'm like, 8.5. Let's do that. So I was thinking about what to do, and I didn't have an idea for a long time, but something kind of came to me. So my category that I decided on is end of the world movies.
Nice.
But there's caveat. My caveat is they all had to be from a different decade.
Cool.
They all had to have wildly different tones, and they all had to be from a different country.
Oh,
yeah.
I
That's
like
fun.
it.
So
That's gonna be hard to guess your movies, I think. Then.
I can guarantee you may have heard of one of them. No, you've probably heard of maybe 2 of them. One I guarantee neither of you have heard of.
Okay.
So
All right. So before we start off talking about our movies, then I want to take a couple stabs at what you guys are thinking. Then
okay.
my guess to what movie you picked for Apocalypse movie would be Stanley Kubrick's Doctor Strangelove or How I
Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love the Bomb.
Yeah, that's my guess for you as your Americanized one.
They are, I will say, if this helps, they are adjacent decades. So they're all
Okay.
from a 30-year period. I won't say
Okay.
what 30-year period. But
I
they're
think it's pretty obvious based on something you mentioned earlier was the 2011.
That's
oh,
right.
2012 is one.
Oh,
that came out in 2010, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
so
I remember. I was there.
Me and Kelvin watched that in theaters. So we have the 90s, 2000s, 2010.
Yeah, that's the 3-year period. I'll
Okay.
consent to that.
Interesting.
I won't say which countries.
I honestly I'm drawing blank on my disaster. Oh, Armageddon as one.
No, but you're kind of in the ballpark.
Ooh,
I was gonna say The Road because that's a phenomenal
I
book
rewatched that last
and
week.
and movie. Nice, I love that movie, but it's 2009.
It's also just too depressing right now.
Very depressing.
Yeah.
Very bleak film.
Wait till you have a son and then reread that.
I'm gonna think about yours. I want to guess Jason's here for crime. I'm gonna guess you went like cop crime.
Chinatown.
Ooh, that would have been a good guess. Yeah, Chinatown's potential. L.A. Confidential.
Especially because I said the 70s. Like,
I did
there's
say the
there
70s,
there were a
didn't
lot
I?
of 70s ones that I looked at.
All right, my 2 guesses here: L.A. Confidential and RoboCop.
Those are great guesses.
I had both of those on the list.
Yeah.
For
Okay.
sure.
Cool. And you guys aren't gonna be able to guess my movies without looking up the director.
Right,
himself,
because we've
so-
never heard of him.
All right.
So, do you have more to discuss about why you chose?
Yes. Sorry.
Not, you know what it was? You know, before we recorded 8.5, Blake, you called me to explain the rules to me. And while you were talking, you were like, yeah, and then we're doing the wild card episode 2 weeks later. I'm like, I still haven't fucking picked anything. And then while you were talking to me, I was like, oh, like foreign films about the apocalypse. I don't know why I settled on that, but I just kind of ran with it.
It's
Okay,
it's
awesome.
really cool because I don't know, apocalypse films seem to have like I don't know if people just have a morbid interest on what the end looks like, and especially with
Well, religion.
Yeah.
yeah.
All of humankind has always wondered what the
I
end
think
is
I have a
like.
a
guess
very
for
good
you
point.
now.
There's apparently, sidebar, there's a lot of British films about the apocalypse
Really?
that came out in the 60s and 70s, I think.
So,
And it kind of makes sense because that's the generation that would
Can I
have
can
grown
I ask
up.
a question for you?
Sure.
Are any of them zombie movies?
Yes.
28 Days Later.
Don't just say it.
Okay.
Okay. It's not going to be Train to Busan, which is a fantastic zombie movie. 28 Days Later is British. So
British.
you could have picked oh no, what's the George Romero movie?
Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead.
Day of the
yeah.
Dead.
Yeah.
And some other ones.
Yeah.
I will say one of them was inspired by Night of the Living Dead. But I will also say I've never really been a huge zombie fan.
I could see you picking Evil Dead as an apocalypse movie. It's American. It's one of our favorite collectively together.
That's true.
So that would be one of my guesses.
Okay.
Shaun of the Dead would be pretty funny.
Oh man,
That
that
would
would have
be
been a
fantastic.
way better choice.
Okay, I think we're gonna start with Jason doing his first movie, then me, and then Mike. We'll keep it the same order.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I don't know which one to do first. I think I'm gonna do the oldest first.
Cool.
So, Dial M for Murder.
Cool. We
No
almost did that
way.
for the podcast.
Yeah, Hitchcock. And I didn't really think about it that we almost did it or anything because
Yeah.
there was there's so many Hitchcock movies.
Right.
So so I went back like fairly far into crime, and I just found the idea of this movie to be so interesting. So Tony Wendis he's a retired tennis player, and his wife is fairly rich, and they just signed they just figured out their wills and life insurance, and he's deciding now to kill her.
Oh.
And so he goes through the process of figuring out an amazing murder. It's such a good plan. And the whole first third of the movie, I was like on the edge of my seat waiting for it to like all go to plan.
Right.
And it almost does like perfectly. And then so the reason he wants to kill her is she took a lover who is a crime novelist.
Oh, interesting
Yeah.
twist.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Tony Wendis is the main character who wants to kill his wife. Mark Halliday is the lover. And Tony asks, how do you go about writing a detective story? And Mark Halliday says, well, you forget detection and concentrate on crime. Crime's the thing. And then you imagine you're going to steal something or murder somebody. And he's like, oh, is that how you do it? Interesting. I won't go through the whole thing, but like he basically pulls out of him, how do you commit the perfect crime? But his plan is already in place. So he's kind of
Oh,
like double
cool.
checking with the crime writer.
Right.
And then his wife, Margot, she's like, do you really believe in the perfect murder to Mark? And he says, yes, absolutely. On paper, that is.
Oh.
And I think I could plan one better than most people, but I doubt if I could carry it out. And then she's like, Tony, who's already planned the murder, he's like, oh, why not? And Mark is like, well, because in stories, things usually turn out the way the author wants them to. And in real life, they don't always.
Interesting.
Wink.
Yeah.
I
Wink.
love the premise.
Yeah.
To me, it almost sounds like a heist movie about a murder, and
Yeah.
I'm really interested in that premise. I really think that's a cool idea. I love that you picked that as your first movie.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable to watch, and it was black and white as well, and so that was like it was nice to see that. But there's so much Hitchcock in this, like it's dripping with Hitchcock.
Awesome.
His Hitchcock is dripping.
Perspiring Hitchcock.
Yeah. So yeah, the first act is just absolutely amazing. Am I going too far into it, or is this how far I should be going?
No, go as far as you
good.
want. You've got
It's
a few
good.
more minutes, I think, left.
Are you timing us?
No, I should have been though.
Yeah, 5 minutes per movie. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Approximately.
So
Okay.
he pulls in this random acquaintance of his who he knows has like a rough life, and he brings him to his apartment, and then he blackmails him into like doing the murder tomorrow night. He's sorted it all out because he's this famous tennis star who doesn't make that much money anymore because he's kind of at the end of his career.
Okay.
But his wife is rich, so he's got like the time, and for the past year, his wife has been sleeping with someone else. There have been letters passed back and forth.
And he's a novelist, so they're great letters.
Yeah, exactly. The murder actually falls apart
Right.
because I don't know how far into spoilers.
I
to
don't.
go.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to do any more spoilers than this. I
It's
almost
so
think,
good.
I
It's
think
so
I almost
good.
want to cut off because I'm hooked. I'm.
Yeah,
You've got a
yeah.
nice hook here. I'm intrigued. I'm watching this movie at some point.
Okay, the way Hitchcock pulls it around is absolutely amazing.
I'm into it.
Yeah,
into it.
I'm very intrigued.
We
by
should do
this.
that at some point.
We will do that. I hope that some of these do make it on the podcast at some point in time. So
We might have to have like a follow-up discussion, or if we have time tonight,
Yeah.
a spoilers discussion.
yes,
Yeah.
post. I almost say we do. I don't know. Like
Because
the
we might
problem
do
is-
them, but so we
problem-
are spoiling these movies for each
Are
other
we-
if we do that.
Are we able to rope in the audience? Like, if there's anyone you want us to talk about more,
Yeah,
do a
if-
full episode on, like, let us know.
Absolutely, yeah. If there's a movie that's the premise is so interesting that you want to check it out, like absolutely let us know. Like I said previous to us recording, there is one movie on my list that there is no way in hell we do not do in this podcast at some point in time. It knocked my socks off so much, and this is your time to talk. So you go ahead. Sorry.
So I went through that quote, that back and forth.
Yeah.
That's like one of the best parts, but there's so much back and forth, and like, so a lot of crime is like centered around a detective, or like in this case a murderer. This has a little bit of both. So there's a detective that comes up later, and he has the best mustache, and it actually has like a little bit, like it has a little bit of a character involved just
That's
in
awesome.
like the very last scene, which I loved.
Yeah.
I just like, as the movie was finishing, I was like just coming down from this high, and then he does this thing with, he just brushes his mustache. It was just funny.
cool.
The power move.
Yeah, and yeah, so like I don't know, like I can't say too many quotes then if we're not spoiling stuff, but the story in this was phenomenal.
How would
Awesome.
you? How would you rate the movie? Like, out of 10? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, so for me myself, I would definitely rate it like a 9.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like
Would
It's-
you put it on par with North by Northwest? Something we have talked about on the podcast. That's Hitchcock.
yes, yeah,
Wow.
and this is so much more. Well, this is a little bit more accessible, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
For the major, like this is a Hitchcock that if you don't want to get like too crazy, this is like a good run of the mill, like mainstream audience type of Hitchcock that can get people intrigued by how he does his movies.
Does it hold up to by today's standards
Yes,
as well?
yes,
Awesome.
Are you almost saying that it would be a good entry point to
yes.
Hitchcock?
It's very good entry point.
Okay.
Cool.
And I didn't know that going in. I just knew that like this fit the bill well, and it like, yeah, 1954. It's like a good starting point for crime before you go really far back.
Right,
Okay.
Right.
Noise.
Okay. Shall we pivot over to me for my first movie?
Yes.
So, my first film that I did was the 1975 Oscar-nominated movie Dog Day Afternoon. Have either of you heard of that?
Heard of it and have no idea what it's
Okay,
about.
so
Yeah,
it
like-
stars Al Pacino
Okay.
in probably the most likable character that he's ever played. The most human character he's ever played. So, the movie itself is a true story about a bank robbery gone horribly wrong. It happened in 1972, so 3 years before the film came out. And when I'm talking, like, horribly wrong, I'm talking, like, so bad it's funny. Like, this movie is a black comedy, so starring Al Pacino. The film review place premiere lists it on their 100 greatest performances of all time as the 4th greatest performance. Like I said, might be my favorite Al Pacino performance of all time, and that's saying something. It's a very grounded performance.
So he's not like over the top Al Pacino.
He's not like great ass Al
yeah,
Pacino.
yeah.
Do you remember that Neil Brennan joke where I think it was like the 90s where Al Pacino was just like, I can only play archetypes or weather now. so this is before that.
So, other
read
main
that.
characters that you might know or cast. So, John Cazale. The name might not be familiar to you, but you would know him from The Godfather as Fredo Corleone.
Ah,
Fucking
So,
A.
collaboration with Al Pacino and Fredo again together.
Did they kiss?
No.
You didn't do the Fredo kiss?
No.
Okay.
So
I don't wanna see it.
John Cazale is one of his partners in crime during the heist. The other actor that I can't actually tell you what character they play because it'll spoil a major part of the movie is Chris Sarandon, who plays Prince Humperdinck in The Princess Bride. I can't remember other movies that he's been in, but a relevant actor, probably even when he becomes very prominent. So I have some like quotes here for you. So this is the first quote. This is the opening 5 minutes of the movie. So we have 3 robbers rob this bank middle of the afternoon, like 4 p.m. So they get in, everybody draws their guns like crazy like moment. It's very tense. Like they lock the doors, and the 3rd robber looks at Al Pacino and says, "I can't do it, Sonny." And he's like, and Sonny's like, "What?" And so he's like, "I'm not gonna make it, Sonny." And Sonny's like, "Oh, fuck me." And like the way he does it, like his voice cracks, and like I literally believed that he was about to cry. And he's literally sitting there like, we've pulled our guns, like this is in motion already.
Oh, wow.
And so the guy's like, I have to go. So literally off the bat, one of the 3 robbers leaves the bank in
Shit.
the opening minutes of the movie.
Wow.
And other crazy things happen. Like, so this is early on in the movie as well. They go into the vault, they pull all the money out. There's $1,000 in cash in the vault. And so Al Pacino looks at the bank manager and says, "Where's the money?" And the bank manager says, "At 3:00, the truck came and pulled all the money out of the bank. And they had the information that the truck was going to deliver the money that day."
Oh, shit.
So the rest of the movie, the police find out. So the police show up. And then after that, the media shows up. And then finally, there's all the spectators. And this goes on over hours over this day because it becomes a hostage situation after this.
Yeah, of course.
And so it's a really interesting film because of the time period in which it came out. The 1970s is a very angry time in America. And so there's a lot of lack of trust for the police due to like police brutality that was happening at that time. There's also the inflation crisis of the 70s that a lot of people, especially in New York, are kind of living in impoverished situations.
I'm glad we moved past all that.
So this is the thing that I want to actually talk about, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in my last film, is that I've come to realize watching these 70s films that we're basically repeating the 70s right now today.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
shit.
it is crazy how like similar to the 70s we are living right now. Like I almost wonder if history just repeats itself every 50 years or so.
Yeah, almost exactly.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
it's wild.
sure.
It honestly is wild. So as the movie goes on, like this just becomes like a circus with like all of these different parties like all in here. It's chaotic. It's also quite funny because of the acting, the emotions in it. But what's really interesting is how the movie peels back the layers of Al Pacino's character. This is really a movie about the character that Al Pacino plays and his motivations, his character. And at some point in time, he becomes almost like an unlikely hero in this situation. And the media almost starts to like show him as that. The police just horribly mess all of this up. It becomes a circus there. Like it's incredible. One of the most like edge of my seat just because of like how my mind blown. At one point I looked at Jess and I was like, the police are messing this all up and this is getting worse and worse for them. And meanwhile, the FBI is there biding their time, letting the police make the mistakes so that they can come in and be the heroes.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
It's very interesting. So Jess and I laughed out loud several times throughout the film. Like when it was over, like her and I looked at each other after and we're both like, wow, that was a really great movie. I've been talking about this movie with other people for the last month. Not a single other person has heard of this movie before. It was nominated for 6 Oscars. It won the Best Original Screenplay at that time. Lost most of its Oscar nominations to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
Common theme with Sidney Lumet. Unfortunate timing with a lot of his greats. Losing to other major films of the era. I have one last quote that I want to mention before I wrap this movie up. Al Pacino's character speaking to the chief of police. So they're kind of having this back and forth, and Sonny's like, "You'd like to kill me, I bet you would." And the police officer says, "I wouldn't like to kill you, but I will if I have to." And Sonny says, "It's your job, right? The guy who kills me, I hope he does it because he hates my guts, not because it's his job."
Yeah.
Whoa.
Very great film. When you guys watch this at some point, I really honestly hope that you and the audience check this film out. What I want you to pay special attention to is the camera work in this film. I was really blown away, and that was something that I had to do some extra research on. And I'm not going to talk about that too much, but just the way that the film is shot, I really noticed it and thought, I don't know how they're shooting this film in this bank and getting around the things that they're getting around. Very interesting behind the scenes there. And the last piece that I'll end on with this film before I pass it on to you, unless you guys have any questions that you want me to answer, is I could not for the life of me guess how this movie was going to end. And that's a very common theme for the next 2 movies that I had. And I think that is something special that Sidney Lumet really brings to his films, is an unexpectedness to how his films end or when they end in the point in the film.
Out of 10, how would you rate this movie?
It's pretty great. It's damn near perfect. I don't like giving scores to movies. I'm gonna give it an 8.5. I think.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to be a little bit critical because I think there is one movie in these 3 that is damn near perfect. So,
Okay.
Yeah. So I gotta set the bar, I guess.
How would you rate Al Pacino's performance compared to his other iconic performances?
This is one of his greatest performances of all time, like easily. It's
Is it him like falling into a character, like disappearing into it, kind of,
absolutely
or is it
disappearing into the character?
Wow.
Like,
because that's a little rare for him. Because a lot of the time he's Al Pacino.
yeah. No, this is a very different performance from him. It's a lot more grounded. It's a lot more nervous. Like he's less in control of the situation. Honestly, all-time great, and over time, it has become known as one of the greatest performances of all time in a film.
Okay.
All right.
Wow, that's a good one.
I hit the ground running with this one. This is probably the first one. I actually did my films in order as well about how I thought you should go into Sidney Lumet's filmography. Not picking 12 Angry Men. I specifically did not do that one because everybody knows that one.
Okay. Sure.
And so this one was almost like a little bit of a lighter tone. It's a little bit of a way to kind of ease yourself into his filmography, I thought. And it's going to be a very stark difference to my second one when I get to that. So, Mike, do you want to take it away with your first film?
Sure. Okay. So, like I said, my category, the wildcard category, is foreign films about the apocalypse. They all have to have wildly different tones, and they all have to be from different decades. So, the decades I chose were the 90s, the aughts, and the 2010s. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with the 2010s, and I'm going to work it back from there.
Cool.
Okay.
Fun.
So the first movie that I'm going to talk about is a Swedish film called Melancholia.
I haven't heard of that.
I love that movie.
Oh, shit. Really?
I didn't because
Wow.
I didn't know it was Swedish for one.
Okay. It's by a.
It's a trilogy. It's
It's
part
of
a trilogy.
a loose trilogy called the Depression Trilogy.
Yeah, or the dark traits. You know that there's like 3 traits.
The Dark Triad?
Dark Triad trilogy. That's
Okay,
it's loosely known as that as well.
I'm not familiar with that, but it's by a guy named.
I am so happy you're happy.
Okay, well, fasten your seatbelts because I
Yeah.
might break your heart. So it's by a guy named Lars von Trier, who is quite the character in and of himself. Before I say anything else, I have to say one thing, and that's fuck this movie.
Really?
Like, really, fuck
Oh
this.
man, I watched this at a great time in my life to be watching this movie.
Okay, well, maybe I watched it at a bad time. I will say, this is an exceptionally well shot and well made movie. It's just, you know what? Let me walk this back before I get to that point. So the premise of the movie is Kirsten Dunst stars as Justine, and she's marrying Alexander Skarsgård. Anyway, she's marrying him at this villa owned by her brother-in-law, John, played by Kiefer Sutherland.
Huge cast.
Huge cast, yeah. Cool. There's actually 2 Skarsgårds in this movie.
Yes.
Wow.
So you get 2 Skarsgårds for the price of one.
The old and the new.
Yeah, actually, Baron Harkonnen is one of the Skarsgårds. He plays her boss. I'm going to lean into the spoilers a bit on this one. So the first half of this movie focuses on the marriage and just how, basically, this is... One of the things I wanted to do when I chose these 3 movies is I wanted to pick 3 wildly different tones. Mm-hmm. And this is essentially an art house film about depression. Mm-hmm. And that kind of goes, the title Melancholia. Melancholia is an antiquated term for depression. And I think that might partly be why I wasn't as maybe well disposed towards this movie as Jason was, because the first 5 minutes of this movie are slow-mo artsy footage of the earth exploding.
Nice.
So the first half of the movie is all about Kirsten Dunst and her wedding and just how all these different things go wrong. Her parents are divorced, and her mom is just a stone cold grade A bitch who makes a big scene at the wedding. Her dad, played by John Hurt, tries to make a speech. It doesn't go that well. Like, immediately, the first thing that happens in this movie is, you know, them being late, like a couple hours late to their own wedding reception because of car troubles. So lots of things are going on, but when we focus on Kirsten Dunst's character, Justine, basically Justine has severe depression and she's just trying to hold it together through this whole ordeal. Mm-hmm. There's actually a very upsetting scene where she talks to her older sister, Kiefer Sutherland's wife, played by Charlotte Gainsborough, where she says like something to the effect of like, I'm carrying this gray wool with me, and it just keeps getting heavier.
And the visuals of that are amazing.
Yes. So good.
There's visuals that come in. Sorry, because I've seen this.
No, go ahead.
Their relationship is very, like, integral, I would say, because it's like the older sister is looking from the outside in at her depression and how fucked it is. Okay. And she is trying to explain it from the outside, and then there's the rest of the movie, which I'll let you go into.
Yeah, so really the central kind of thrust or focus of the movie is Justine and her older sister Claire, and the whole idea is that Justine has severe depression, and Claire, her older sister, Kiefer Sutherland's wife, is kind of the one taking care of her. And when I say fuck this movie, I mean fuck this movie because it made me depressed. Like... Seriously, like I've had kind of, not to get too personal, but I've had an on again, off again romance with high functioning depression, and like,
same.
Yeah, high five.
Yeah.
So this is kind of funny. I actually got on a Saturday night. I watched this movie alone in my apartment. I got 5 minutes to the end of the movie and I turned it off.
Wow.
And then I went to bed. And I woke up upset the next day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you finished it?
I finished it like a full 24 hours later.
Yeah.
Like at 6 p.m. the next day. I was like, fuck it. And I turned it on, and the second half is about, there's a rogue planet named Melancholia that scientists have just discovered. Mm-hmm. And this rogue planet is about to come crashing into the Earth. Mm-hmm. It's essentially like... Someone says it's going to crash into us and the Earth is going to explode into a billion pieces.
Yeah.
So There's what's interesting though, and again, I'm leaning a little bit on spoilers, is that Kirsten Dunst is again super fucking depressed. Like after she ends up basically sabotaging her own wedding.
Wow.
At her wedding, she mouths off to her boss, Baron Harkonnen, and ends up getting fired. We were talking earlier about movies that are kind of meh but are sold on their performance, and Kirsten Dunst's performance as Justine has been widely critically acclaimed, and she deserves it. She's fucking amazing in this movie.
Awesome.
Like I said, this movie made me depressed, and that's because of her.
That is the point too.
Yes. So
and oh fuck, I loved it because it was so accurate to me.
Yeah, and you know, Lars von Trier, the director, he went on record saying that like this movie was inspired by a depressive episode he has, and that the character of Justine is heavily based on himself. And what he observed was that when he became depressed, it's like the whole world became depressed.
Right.
And that's kind of what inspires this movie.
It's a very interesting premise. I don't want you to spoil this bit to me, but it's almost as if the world ending here, like, you don't even know if that's actually something that's happening and present in the world, or if it's like the depression weighing the character down, and it like metastasizes. I can't think of the exact word.
That's a good word.
Like she's almost summoning the rogue planet with her depression. Other critics have observed that about the movie.
Yeah. And it's like I don't necessarily want to say antithesis of Don't Look Up, but it's kind of like that where she's like, look up. Like she's like look at what is happening.
Right.
To me, at least.
Yeah.
Like that is the feeling that I'm feeling. And so look up and understand.
What is interesting about the movie is that in the second half, as Melancholia is raging towards planet Earth, there's a scene where like Charlotte, her older sister, I think her name's Charlotte, has to like help her into a bathtub and feed her because she's so depressed she can't even do that. Wow. But then as the world is ending, Justine kind of cheers right up, and Charlotte, the older sister, becomes a fucking mess.
Yeah. So Claire is the sister's
Claire.
name. Charlotte is the actress.
Right. There's this really kind of haunting scene where they're talking at dinner, and Justine says, like, the earth is evil and no one will miss it. I don't have the direct quote on me, but she's essentially saying that, like, life is a mistake, and in a few hours, it won't exist anymore.
Wow.
And it's just... This movie made me fucking depressed. I can't overstate that.
So the family around her and how she interacts with them, and then how everything changes throughout the movie, very phenomenal.
Awesome. Yeah.
Very good. I really enjoyed that because you see like the interaction before when it's just her depressed, and then at like by the end where she's like, I've been ready for this type of thing my whole life.
Yeah.
And none of you were, and none of you could understand until right now, and it's too late.
I would almost say that this may actually be one of, if not the most accurate portrayals of depression in cinema. And the fact that it just made me so sad watching it.
That sounds like a hard watch.
There's just a sense of like hopelessness and futility in this movie.
I think other people might have trouble seeing it for what it is, in like how good at portraying it is, and I don't know, like I watched it in a certain period of my life where that like I was like, this is the only thing that's ever gotten me, and like so that's where like I'm not sure if everybody, like I would like to see what other people, everybody has a certain level of experience with this kind of topic. So
yeah, I guess like if you have depression, you might really hate this, or you might feel extremely validated by this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, we got to move on. So Jason, it's actually your turn. Second movie. What's up on the docket?
All right. So, one guess was correct. Who thinks it's theirs?
Chinatown.
It's Chinatown.
It's RoboCop.
Man, RoboCop, I want to do so bad.
We will do it for the podcast.
And Judgment Day was there's RoboCop, and then there's the other.
Oh, you're talking about Oh no, I know what you're talking about.
I just had it, but
the Judge Dredd.
Judge Dredd.
Oh shit.
Yeah, that was the other one that like I really loved those movies. But anyways, I went with Chinatown more.
Oh man, I'm jealous that you've watched Chinatown now.
Yeah, I know. It's always been on the list. It is like part of the list of like the world.
It's quintessential Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, exactly. And I loved watching younger Jack Nicholson. Yeah, so I chose this because like as my 70s movie because it's one of the best of the crime in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So the first one that I did was Criminal Mastermind, like suspense,
right?
With Dial M for Murder. This one is like the gritty detective, and it's kind of a slow burn, but it keeps you engaged because you don't know what's happening, and you have this gritty detective trying to figure it out, and he's like a suave, gritty detective, like he can deal with some shit. Throughout most of the movie, he has a bandage on his nose because one of the bad guys, he doesn't really know who hired these people. He like he puts a knife in his nose and slits his nostril, like cuts it because he's like the guy's like oh, like Curious Kitty, like what happens to Curious Kitties? They get their snout scratched or something like that, and cuts his nose, and so that like that's kind of like part of who he is in that moment. Jack Nicholson is, well, he left the force. He was a cop, and he is now a private detective with like a very successful little firm that he's running, and he actually gets swindled, which I wasn't expecting. Like he was swindled to snoop on somebody. Somebody's wife comes in and was like, "Could you go after my husband to see if he is actually cheating?"
Interesting. This is kind of like the original Fletch vibes.
Yeah, that was also kind of like I saw a bunch of the Fletch while I was like researching this area. He finds out that the husband that he's looking at and is actually cheating. He finds out that the lady that came in wasn't actually his wife. And he's like, I am a professional at this.
Right.
How did I get swindled? So he goes after the actual wife of the guy. I don't know if I'm explaining this fully enough, but the setting of this, it's a 70s movie, but it's based on like the 30s in LA. So this is right around the time, like before the Great Depression, I think. And the city is in a drought, like hardcore drought.
Okay.
People are like everything's kind of bad, and the people who control the water, like the water department, that's where this whole like conspiracy lies. And so he's going after the.
Is this in Hollywood? Like taking place in LA?
Yeah, LA. And so this is actually based on a like somewhat true events of
the time period.
Yeah, and there was like a water wars that was happening behind the scenes in LA. So I don't want to. No, this doesn't really matter because it's history, really. But the valley, you know, the valley, like everyone knows the valley. The valley was created off of this huge conspiracy where the water people, they were like flushing water at night so that nobody noticed. So everybody was in a drought while they're pumping water and just making it disappear. They created a drought so that they could buy up all this property in this valley. Right. And then because they controlled the water, they were going to start sending it out to the valley so that became prime real estate. So that's the whole like real life thing. And this is like the movie that brought this to attention in the 70s. You know, in the 70s, everybody hates cops. Everybody hates like the
very
man.
on theme with what I did as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So this actually brought about a bunch of that vibe in the 70s that was happening. Right. This movie helped with that. Yeah. So this is like, it's a huge movie. Jack Nicholson is amazing throughout it. Roman Polanski is a huge, amazing director. Yeah. And I don't actually know enough of his works, but like Chinatown,
Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah. Like somewhat more recently, he has like Carnage, The Ghost Rider, The Tenant. No, I don't know that one either.
Those are all good movies.
Yeah, he's Polish and Annabelle's Polish, so she loves him.
Yeah. Bit of a controversial figure as well in Hollywood.
Yeah. There's a surprising amount of Polish people in Hollywood. Like,
Interesting.
and they make some amazing things, and they run a lot of like the sets, like production and stuff too. The story, I don't know how much to talk about the story at this point.
You're pretty much at your limit, I think, for time anyway, so.
Okay, I just want to say the quote that I have. Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown. Is like the classic line. Yeah. And so like Chinatown is really rough, and that's where he came from as a cop, and so everything circles back to that in this movie. With like, I didn't know how it was going to be tied in, and then it just at the end gets tied in.
This sounds like a very rewatchable movie that rewards rewatches and understanding things.
Yeah.
And I love a movie that is complicated, but also like you're able to understand and follow what's happening.
Yeah, and honestly, just to speak about like what I loved about this movie, the ending. Yeah. Like I was like, I really wanted this person to get away, and I was like, they have to. And then there's like the tiniest thing was foreshadowing, and I saw it.
Yeah.
I was like, this is important, and it's because it was so unimportant that it was important.
Interesting.
And then so that thing came back full circle and was awesome, and just like destroyed me, because by the end I was so invested that like I was like, no. And then just to tie in another quote joke that really displayed Jack Nicholson's like character and his whole vibe as like a gritty jokester kind of cop. One of the cops that he used to work with in Chinatown is like, what happened to your nose, Jake? Someone slammed a window on it? And he was like, nope, your wife got excited. She crossed her legs a little too early. And like, it was just like the perfect little slam down, and the guy tried to go after him, and like, it was, and the villain is so far removed from the beginning of the movie that I was like, where is the villain? Like, who is the one actually doing all this? And the villain, as we learned him to be, is just nails it. His name's John Huston. Is that the same guy? No.
I think John Huston's the actor.
Yeah, John Huston, the actor. Yeah. Anyways, he just killed it with like one of his quotes, which I think I have right here. So Jake, the detective, is talking to the villain Noah Cross, and he's like, "How much are you worth?" And the villain's like, "I have no idea. How much do you want?" And Jake is like, "I just want to know what you're worth. More than 10 million?" And Noah's like, "Oh my, yes." And Jake is like, "Why are you doing it? How much better can you eat? What could you buy that you can't already afford?" And Noah's like, "The future, Mr. Geddes, the future." And
John Huston, the villain, kills it in that movie.
Yeah, like absolutely amazing and like realistic, and that's what brought about a lot of that change in the 70s, I think. Like that fit in very well with what was happening in the 70s.
So, my next film, my second film on the list here, we're going a little bit darker. We're going back in time a little bit to the 1965 film The Hill. I don't expect either of you to ever heard of this one. It's one of his best, in my opinion. Not as well known. It's starring maybe an actor that you might have known that you might know named Sean Connery in one of his personal favorite movies of all time. And he specifically took the film to avoid being typecast as James Bond. This is him exiting James Bond. And it's credited with the film that actually pivoted his career into more dramatic roles. And that was what he wanted. So this is a very important film, not only to him, but to his career as well. It's the first of 5 films that he ended up making with Sidney Lumet. And he said that Sidney Lumet is one of his favorite directors ever to have worked with. The film itself is a black and white film. It's a British film, a lot of British actors in it. Essentially, it's a prison drama about a group of misfit military servicemen who are sent to an African military prison. It's a British military prison during World War II, I believe.
Would this be the Berber War or the one that
I believe it's World War II.
Churchill? So there's little mini campaigns that happened during that time in North Africa, and so is that and Churchill Anyways, I'll let you continue.
The name of the movie is based on the giant hill in the center of the prison compound, which is used as punishment. So it's 200 feet high, and what you are forced to do is in the hot African sun, you're forced to run up and down the hill both sides while carrying your bags and everything else. And when I'm saying hot, I mean like 50 degrees Celsius, Sahara Desert hot. It's known as the least hospitable place on Earth. So basically, these new 5 prisoners show up, and over time, as they're kind of initiated into the prison encampment, each one of them has a different reason for being there, and various levels of problems with themselves. Like one of them's a drunk, one of them stole and sold stuff to the enemy military, like equipment. Sean Connery's character disobeyed an order from a superior and then ended up punching him in the face. He was actually an officer and a superior. He disagreed with the superior.
I can picture him doing that in real life.
Yeah. This is a really great performance by him, and one of him at a younger time as well, which is really cool.
I've wanted to watch some of him as a younger actor. Yeah.
Have you seen any of his James Bond films?
No.
Very good, very good.
Did you know, this is just kind of left field, do you know that he actually hated playing James Bond?
Yeah, this is the reason why he took this role, is because he wanted to pivot out of that. Very, very important film in his career. Like, I can't understate that enough. If you had to guess, what would you say rating-wise? I haven't told you, The Hill's not a well-known film. Where do you think rating-wise in IMDb this stands on actual fiction films in his filmography?
Are you talking about it just in his, or
just in his top ratings of films
of whose? Sorry, of
Sean Connery's.
Sean Connery's.
Yeah.
Are we talking performance-wise?
We're talking rating of his films, his starring roles.
Since it's his transition out, those the Bonds were probably the favorites, and then this one is probably, I'm gonna guess, third.
You nailed it.
Fucking
third.
right.
However, if his first two, this is actually higher rated than the James Bond films of his. His first highest is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade with an 8.2.
Amazing.
The second one, and this is kind of tied, so you could argue, is The Untouchables, which is a crime film that you might have picked.
I almost actually did pick that one.
It's so funny how yours and our films intertwine a little bit.
I
several
totally
times.
forgot he was in that movie.
Yeah,
The
I haven't seen
Untouchables.
it myself. I need to watch it at some point. Fill out my my crime bingo card. What's really interesting about this film is it's really a character study. There's not a lot of plot driving things forward. There's no music whatsoever in this film. It's a very grounded film. As the prisoners are initiated into this, they clash with the authorities of the camp. So there's one new guard in particular who wants to show that he's rough and tough kind of thing. So he puts these characters through these excessive punishments, and one of the characters actually dies. And so at this point in time, things get crazy in the camp because there's this power struggle between the sergeant of the camp. One of the other staff is more humane, and he's like, this is wrong. We should be taking care of these men more and training them, and we push somebody too far. This guy's taking control of this camp, and you don't even see that he's taking control of this camp.
Yeah.
And then there's the prisoners themselves, and Sean Connery, being an officer, a very dutiful man, is this is wrong as well. And so there's all this power struggle going on in the camp, and how we're going to resolve this issue. I don't want to spoil how this film ends. I looked at Jess. This is the second time I looked at Jess in our 3 films, and I said, I have literally no idea how this movie ends. And I will say, this is one of the bleakest endings to a film I've ever seen.
Wow.
The implication of it, I was like, wow. I did not expect it to take the turn that it did. And it ends at almost a high point in the film. It feels abrupt, but it was perfect in the execution of the ending.
One of the movies I was looking into was The Mechanic.
That's Christian Bale, right?
No.
Oh,
no.
different than Mechanic.
So this is The Mechanic. This is the 70s Mechanic.
Neat.
So actually, it was Jason Statham who did The Mechanic in the more modern times.
Okay.
And it's very different. That's complete.
Yeah.
It's on the same track, but anyways, Charles Bronson is
Nice.
one of the actors in that, and he was also in The Great Escape, which is very similar to this movie.
Right.
The Great Escape is one of the best movies. Like, it's one of my favorite movies.
It's a good one.
How similar? Have you seen?
I haven't seen those, so
Okay.
I can't comment on that. I will say, Jess hated this film. Like,
yeah.
hated this film, and that's why I was like, and I really enjoyed it. I thought like the characterizations are really well done. There's, like I said, there's not a lot of plot. It's just about the characters, how they're dealing with the situation that they're faced with. Every character, every one of those actors had a really phenomenal performance. There's not a lot of like specific lines that I want to talk about because it's just the interactions between the five of them and how they're reacting to the plot going forward.
So like The Great Escape is like a lighter, funner version
Yeah.
of that with a little bit of darkness and tragedy and the realism of World War II, but they're trying to escape from a camp. So it's all centered in a camp though, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
The entire movie takes place in there. I would recommend watching with subtitles because the British accents in this one are very strong, and the film almost does like too good of a job of portraying what it's like to be in a military prison. Like there's a lot of, officers like yelling and forcing drills and stuff like that. And because like there's this constant yelling, there's so much going on in the background, like it really does feel like you're there, but it's also somewhat hard to make out the actors and what they're saying at times. And so I would recommend listening to that because I did lose a little bit at the beginning, I think.
Okay.
And they did too good of a job with that. It's actually based on a screenplay by a guy who spent some time in military prison. So
Wow.
Fucking A.
how I want to end this movie is two very famous, notable Hollywood people who cited this as their favorite films of all time. It's a movie that's kind of faded into obscurity, like a lot of Sidney Lumet's films, but Woody Allen stated that this is one of his favorite films of all time.
Another not controversial at all director.
Yes. So I actually really like the quote that he said about the film. So I'm going to say it here. So for some reason, American audiences do not really know the film The Hill. In a filmography like Sidney Lumet's, which includes many remarkable works, The Hill is perhaps the most successful. I certainly consider it one of the greatest American films. The making of this captivating story is perfect, from the actors' impeccable performances to the inspired camera movements. And that's something to, again, I really want to highlight is how Sidney Lumet uses the camera to his advantage, and how he takes, especially if you ever watch this film, and I really hope you guys do check this out, how he portrays the characters' faces. He does it in a grotesque way to really like magnify their emotions and their reactions to the things going on. So back to the quote. It's an immediate and total experience. Every time I see it, I am surprised that such a wonderful film can pass unnoticed and fall into oblivion, which is exactly what happened. And it's really sad about this. The other actor who cited this as one of their favorite films of all time is Angelina Jolie. And she actually said that this inspired the 2013 film Unbroken, which she directed and was written by the Coen brothers.
Oh wow.
Yes, very important film. I've never actually seen it. I'm a big fan of the Coen brothers.
I've never heard that they wrote a movie that she directed.
Yeah, really cool. I'm
That's
gonna have to
kinda
check that
fucked
out
up.
after seeing The Hill. I really loved it. I really enjoyed it.
It's a sports action drama war film.
Yes,
Oh,
a lot
okay.
happening in it.
So a totally normal movie.
Yes. All right, let's move on to your second movie, Mike.
Okay. So I do have to confess, one of you guessed this movie.
Yeah.
So my category again was foreign.
You guessed mine, and I guessed
That's
yours.
true.
So
Foreign films about the apocalypse. So the movie I chose from 2002 is 28 Days Later.
Which is one of my favorites of all
it's
time.
one of the best zombie films of all time, too.
Absolutely.
So I will say,
Had you seen it before?
no, I hadn't.
Oh,
So I
the
watched
first
it.
viewing.
I actually watched it. So I watched Melancholia, and I was fucking depressed. So I was like, "Oh, I need to watch something a little more uplifting." And then I watched 28 Days Later, and I'm like, "Well, this was a terrible decision." So I will say, probably out of my three movies, I have the least to say about this movie, but I will say I really enjoyed it. This movie stars a young Cillian Murphy as a dude named Jim who gets hit by a truck. He's a delivery boy who gets hit by a truck or something and goes into a coma and wakes up 28 days later after a rage virus has infected the populace. So this movie is most notable for, I believe, popularizing, if not introducing, the concept of fast zombies.
Yes.
There's some very good scenes where he wakes up just wandering around the deserted streets of London looking for people. He wanders into a church. He sees a priest who comes sprinting towards him with blood-red eyes, foaming at the mouth. And things just get better and better from there. So,
honestly, it's been a long time since I watched this, but this is one of the great zombie movies, and I'm so glad you picked
I
it.
will say, I did write this down. Stylus magazine in 2007 considers this the second best zombie movie of all time, after only Night of the Living Dead, which kind of really introduced the concept to modern audiences. But I will say that I was depressed after Melancholia, so I wanted to watch something uplifting, and I chose this movie. But I will say that, like, what I think I admired most about this movie was the vibe or the tone, because this isn't as bleak as this movie is. It's not a nihilistic movie.
No, it's got hope at the end. Like, I mean, Brendan Gleeson's character is very tragic. What happens to him? I love him as an actor, and his portrayal is one of the greatest parts of the film. And even though he meets a very tragic end, like partway through, there is. You're right. There's hope at the end.
And even just like throughout the movie, like one of my favorite scenes is Cillian Murphy, Jim. He hooks up with some other people. One of them played by Naomi Harris, and then he meets I already forget that guy's name. Cillian Murphy and Naomi Harris meet up with a father and a daughter, and one of my favorite scenes is they raid a grocery store, and the whole scene is just them like taking shit, and like there's a scene where Cillian Murphy is like loading wine into the cart, and the older guy's like, "The fuck are you doing? Get that shit out of there!" And he's like, "See, you want this aged scotch? That's what we're taking with us." And he's like loading it into the cart, and then there's a really funny moment where like as they're like pushing their shopping carts out of this grocery store, he just like is like, "Oh, here, let me get this," and he lays his credit card down on the counter as they leave.
Right.
So like this movie is surprisingly charming. Like I was noted that like, you know, Naomi Harris that he meets up with pretty quickly after waking up, she tells him multiple times, like, if you slow me down, I'm going to leave you behind. Or, you know, when they meet up with the father and daughter, she's like, you know, if they slow us down, like, we don't need them, they need us. And, like, if they slow us down, we're going to leave them behind. And, like, as the movie goes on, like, she starts kind of opening up to him. He starts opening up to her and all that fun stuff. And
they infect each other.
Kinda, yeah.
So she was in 2 James Bond movies.
That's right.
Cool.
She was
I didn't know that.
Moneypenny, right?
Skyfall Inspector. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was Eve, and then Moneypenny.
Okay, I'm not a super familiar with James Bond. Actually, it's funny that we're talking about that after Sean Connery. But honestly, like, if anything, whereas Melancholia was just like, life sucks. This planet sucks, let's blow it up. This movie was almost kind of, you know, it's like, yeah, things are bad, but like you need to stick it out. Or you need to stick it out, you need to stick together. Like we almost need each other. And there's almost kind of like a very strong family vibe throughout the movie.
Yeah, they do bond and become a family by the end, I would say.
And he ends up hooking up. The whole thing is they catch a distress signal from a military base and they go towards it, and things quickly are not quite what they seem there.
Right.
And yeah, it's almost...
First there were fast zombies, now they're smart zombies, and they are calling you home. Is that... No, it's not it,
but we'll workshop that. But anyways, yeah.
Can you imagine just really smart zombies? Like they're like doing some like physics and stuff in their heads really quick and like figuring out. That'd be scary.
There's a bad guy character. His name's I have it written down. His name is well, whatever. He's a major, and there's a scene where they're at this military base having a very tense dinner, and he says, you know, in the last 4 weeks, all I've really seen is people killing people, and the 4 weeks before that, it was just killing people, and the 4 weeks before that, just people killing people. And this movie, a lot of zombie movies like The Walking Dead and The Night of the Living Dead and all that, a common thread running through all of them isn't so much the zombies being the biggest threat to the characters so much as
the people.
It's man's inhumanity to man. And this movie highlights that in a very interesting way.
Absolutely.
The villain in this movie is surprisingly sympathetic, but also like completely abhorrent. So... anyways, yeah, Melancholia can go fuck itself, but I would recommend this movie.
Cool.
And it's streaming on Disney Plus of all places.
Awesome. We will do that at the end. I did think about that we'll summarize what movies are streaming where.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we'll link them in later at the beginning. I don't know.
We'll talk about the end because we haven't talked about all the movies yet, right?
Yeah, so. I know, but the people listening, whatever, it doesn't matter.
You know what? Yeah.
Move on.
If it sounds interesting, go find it.
Yeah. Go on Just Watch and
Yeah.
you're set. Like, just make Just Watch one of your bookmarks and you're set. You can listen to this and not have to listen to us tell you where it is.
You could just
Absolutely.
turn the podcast off right now and just, yeah.
No. I got one movie left. And
Okay.
I am excited to talk
All right.
about it. But first, Jason's last movie.
Yes. Man, I'm actually pretty excited about this. I hope you two have seen it. This is my second viewing.
Cool.
But this movie potentially incited certain psychopathic, like,
Oh, I know what you're going to talk
killers.
about.
I think
You're talking about Natural Born Killers, aren't you?
7?
No, Natural Born Killers.
Ah.
That's it. Yeah.
I haven't seen it fully yet. I saw part of it on TV
Okay.
once.
So definitely get subtitles because on this is my second watch. The first time I watched it, I was like 14, and bad time to watch it, but it was like amazing to me. Yeah, Natural Born Killers. That's a 1994. Woody Harrelson just nails it in this, and just as a shout out to Annabelle, it's Juliette Lewis.
Yes.
is Mallory Knox.
Fantastic actress.
Yeah,
Love her.
she really is. She started out in like one of the 90210 or some bullshit like that, like one of
I'm
those
not sure.
shows.
One of my more memorable movies of her is Christmas Vacation, obviously.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's
but,
fine.
and a few others. She's been in a few other great films.
I have no idea who you guys are talking about.
It's like a Bonnie and Clyde, but with 90s vibes. So first they meet. He's working for a butcher, and her dad, like, he shows up to her house, and her dad is Rodney Dangerfield.
That's awesome.
And Rodney Dangerfield is like, this is the craziest, most like fucked up thing that he's probably ever done. The craziest character that he's ever played. He's a comedian, but he's playing this so funny, like, he in such a dark way. This movie is like quintessential 90s.
Okay.
Like 2 years before this, like Nirvana just hit the like waves with Teen Spirit, and everything changed after that. This fell in line directly after that with like the craziest vibe of the 90s, I would say. Just like, at least like movie culture, like, which kind of ended. I want to say this is very relevant to we were just talking about this movie because of the soundtrack. Do you remember what I'm talking about? It came out in 2000. Requiem for a Dream.
Oh, holy shit.
So like, Natural Born Killers may have been one of the first movies to like describe this decade of like crime movies, but like Requiem for a Dream ended it in 2000 or so, whenever that came.
2003, I believe.
I remembered from when I was 14, like, how awesome this movie was, how like crazy the violence was. Like, this was my psycho killers side of crime, and we are following this couple as they just go on a murder spree, like,
Right.
like pure, like, no thought about who they're killing. They're just killing for the fun of it.
It's a very stylish film. too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is what I forgot, was how artistic and like how complex it is. It's constant. It's like ADHD,
Right.
which is like what came out in the 90s. We all were diagnosed with it. Everybody was diagnosed with it who was born in the 90s.
Yeah.
This is like kind of like where that idea started or something like that. I don't think anything done before this was the way this was, and not too many followed up with it in such an amazing way. You have to put subtitles on this. I watched the director's cut,
Right.
which is 4 minutes extra. So
Okay.
they cut out 4 minutes so that they didn't get rated R. Which I don't know. I don't know what 4 minutes they cut out, because it's all rated R. It's fucked. And but goddamn, is this a good movie? So wait, you've seen it? You've seen it?
I've seen parts of
I've heard of it. I haven't
Okay.
seen it.
Go watch this fucking thing.
Okay.
It is glorious, and Woody Harrelson is like at his peak because he still has hair. And,
But not all over. It's like patchy.
yeah,
Starting to go. Starting to go.
But like he looks fucking badass, and they have like so much artistic clips. There's clips of everything like sewn into this movie. Like they hacked it apart and sewed it back together.
Right.
And there's little clips of like cartoon of like a super jacked Woody Harrelson. Like it's like Woody Harrelson was the Hulk, and it was like drawn in the 90s because it was.
Right.
And it was so good, like that little interlaced thing. And the story, like the love that these two had for each other and the lack of humanity that they had. And like the love because of that, it encaptures something that it's perfect.
Cool.
For crime, it's a little like it is the 90s crime. Like there's so many good 90s crime.
It's so
movies,
stylish that it's jarring if you were to like watch it with like Goodfellas or something like that, because it's so different and how it portrays the film, and it's so artsy.
So it's by the director Oliver Stone, who isn't super well known. Platoon is the only thing that I know from him.
No, Oliver Stone is actually a very prominent writer. He's
he did
he's pretty
JFK.
prominent. He's not a name that you know, but
Platoon, Wall Street, 8 Million Ways to
Wall
Die.
Street,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did he do Scarface?
No.
He did Scarface.
Oh.
He wrote on it.
Yes, that's what I mean. He was a really prominent
Okay.
writer. So we do have a connection in a writing credit here with Conan the Barbarian.
What?
That's where our connection to our previous filmography is. I knew that Oliver Stone had popped up in a previous episode.
Wait, are you saying Oliver Stone wrote on Conan the Barbarian?
He wrote the film Conan, the 1982 Arnold Schwarzenegger film.
That's
Yeah.
so fucking funny. I would never have linked that
So
guy with that movie.
This is like a director that I want to see more of his stuff, and I want to look into his writing. I want to look into him a little bit more. But the whole point, and this is gonna round out like a lot of our discussions tonight, is that media kills everything. But this is a rare 90s Robert Downey Jr. film.
oh,
Interesting.
He plays an Australian reporter,
Uh-huh.
and he's part of the media. And this is like kind of what Mickey and Mallory are like going against, and it's like it's throughout the film is like how media corrupts everything. And so that's very like on par for some of our discussions and on like some of our so this is like one of the classic quotes is Mickey is talking to the reporter Robert Downey Jr. Wayne Gale, and so Mickey's like, I realized my true calling in life, and Wayne Gale's like, what's that? And Mickey's like, shit, man, I'm a natural born killer. And he nails that, like saying the title of the movie.
You and I are on such a similar brainwave
Such
in
a
this
pulse.
this episode.
Okay, yeah.
I
So,
can't wait to tell you what my last movie
oh,
is.
awesome! I'm pumped. So Mickey is saying to Wayne, he's like, "You'll never understand, Wayne. You and me, because Wayne is like a reporter. He's interviewing him. You'll never understand, Wayne. You and me, we're not even the same species. I used to be you, then I evolved. From where you're standing, you're a man. From where I'm standing, you're an ape. You're not even an ape. You're a media person. Media's like the weather, only it's man-made weather. Murder, it's pure. You're the one who made it impure. You're buying and selling fear. You say why? I say why bother?"
Nice.
And like,
it's a good line.
yeah, it's just all about like going into the mind of the psychopath, but then also looking back on what created the psychopath, which is the media.
Right. I will check that out again. I don't think I gave it the time of day that it deserved at that point in time. I don't know if I was mature enough to understand it at that point in time. Because like I said, I have seen parts of it, but it's been probably about 10 years since I checked it out.
So like my original viewing, I got a lot of it, I think, was going on, but I definitely missed a lot too. And Fight Club is a crime movie.
Yep.
It's one of my favorite movies, or it has been in the past. I've grown past it now.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of what happened with Natural Born Killers. Is it was like a lot of people, and it portrays this in the film. regular teens and everything loved Mickey and Mallory.
Right.
And it shows it in the media that was like interspersed throughout. And so it's like a similar thing with Fight Club, where like every guy loved Fight Club because it felt like something real, something that they wanted but couldn't get, and they wanted to be like that but like never could, or something like that.
So it's
Anyways,
kind of like that 90s anti-establishment
yeah,
kind of edge.
Yeah, exactly.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, I'm done.
You've been cut off now. We got 2 other movies to talk before we wrap this up.
All right.
So, like I said, you and I are on a very similar brainwave on this episode. My final film is maybe Sidney Lumet's masterpiece. It's not as highly rated as 12 Angry Men. It's my front runner for best film that I've watched this year. I absolutely love it. It's the 1976 film Network. Have either of you heard of Network before?
No.
So, it's a satirical black comedy, and it honestly today it almost feels like a precursor of what's to come with media. I'm going to start with the opening narration and to start and get you guys into the vibe of this film. So, this is the story of Howard Beale, who was the news anchor on UBS TV. In his time, Howard Beale had been a mandarin of television, the grand old man of news, with a hut rating of 16 and a 28 audience share. In 1969, however, his fortunes began to decline. He fell to a 22 share. The following year, his wife died, and he was left a childless widower with an 8 rating and a 12 share. He became morose and isolated, began to drink heavily, and on September 22nd, 1975, he was fired, effective in 2 weeks. The news was broken to him by Max Schumacher, who was the president of the news division at UBS. The 2 old friends got properly pissed. So, the opening of the film opens with basically these 2 guys Howard Beale and Max Schumacher going out, getting blackout drunk together to basically just stew over what's happened and how it's out of their control. And so while they're blackout drunk, Howard Beale says to his friend, like, I have nothing left to live for. Like, this was it. They're like, I'm in my 60s. Like, I have no family. This is the last thing you're taking away from me. And so Max Schumacher, blackout drunk, says, well, maybe you should just kill yourself. Like, he's like, why don't you do it live on there? He's like, I bet you'd get a lot of, your share would go up. So the next day, he goes on the air and he says, well, audience, this is the end of my career as the host of this news program. I've been let go and effective in a couple weeks. He's like, I really have nothing left to live for, so in 2 weeks' time, I'm just gonna blow my brains out live on the air.
Wow.
And so the great part of this is nobody's paying attention because everybody's wrote this off. Yeah. So it takes a few minutes before somebody realizes that this has gone live out to America.
Yeah.
And so this starts a storm, right?
Oh, wow.
The network is like, oh my God, like this is going to kill us. And instead, what happens is the ratings go up. And so there's this woman at the network who's an up-and-coming network director, and she realizes that she can make money off of this.
Uh-oh.
She's like, so her whole thing in this film is, I want to tap into the anger of Americans and the American citizens. And this man right here is saying what all of us think. Because there's another scene where he's allowed to go back on to have like a better end to his career, and instead he goes up and says exactly what he thinks about him getting fired. And Max, who's pissed off by everything going on and is like feels like everything's unjust here, says screw it, he stays on the air. And so basically, like, the woman, it essentially capitalizes on this and creates this news program channeling anger, and they call him the mad prophet of the airwaves. Wow. This film is full of fantastic quotes, like one of the greatest quotes of all time, and I haven't been able to get it out of my head the last like few weeks since I've seen this, is at some point in the film he just shows up like after wandering the streets, and he gets up on his program live on the air, hair's a mess, like everything, and he's like screaming at like the camera, at the American audience, and he gets up to the camera and he's like right there face to face. And he's saying like about how America, like all these problems with inflation and oil and gas and all this stuff. And he's like, we're going to fix that. But he's like, before that, I want you to first get up out of your chairs, open the window, stick your head out and yell and say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore. And he just keeps saying that. And so it cuts to Max's house and his family there watching, and his daughter gets up and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm going to the window to see if anybody is yelling this, like see what's happening. And this is in New York, and this is one of my favorite scenes of the entire film. Is she's got her head out the window and people are just opening up their windows and screaming, I'm mad as hell and I'm not gonna take this anymore. And the entire streets of New York just fill with people screaming like that.
Wow.
This is one of the most quotable, one of the most epic films I've ever seen. The ending is poetic. It's beautiful. It's psychotic and amazing. And like, again, I said to Jess, I don't know how this is gonna end. And as soon as I got an inkling, I literally sat back laughing. I was like, I should have known this is where this film was going. It was so perfect. The actors in this film, Faye Dunaway
is also in Chicago.
Also in Chinatown.
Oh, Chinatown.
Yes.
I said the wrong
Who
one.
also stars in the original Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at
Fucking
those
right.
connections. So she is the one who capitalizes on Beale's ratings and pushes them to take this on. Robert Duvall, also prominent in this. An actor who played a main character in The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, as well as Thank You for Smoking. And he appeared in The Road, which I just watched last week again, and I was like, wait, I know that old man. He's the old man who they find on the road.
Eli.
What? Yeah, maybe.
No, yeah, they made a guy named Eli.
Yeah. I was thinking the Book of Eli.
Yeah.
I was like,
That threw me off too.
Eli has one of my favorite quotes from when I was like a young, edgy 14-year-old.
Cool.
And that was like on my Facebook profile as like one of my favorite quotes.
And this film is satirical in a very similar way as Thank You for Smoking, and I loved that film as well. I don't know if either of you have ever watched it. Very good, highly recommend.
I've heard of it.
The last actor that I actually want to mention is Ned Beatty, who actually voices Lotso, the evil bear in Toy Story 3. He has the single greatest monologue in film that I have ever seen, explaining how capitalism works in a modern America. And it's not only is it fantastic what he says, it's the way it's shot. It's across the boardroom, and it's the 70s, so there's all these like little lamps across the boardroom, and so he stands at the end of it like a mad god screaming his prophecy of capitalism in America. And it's so beautifully shot.
I've seen a clip.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It for that scene alone, you need to see this movie. It's mind-blowingly good. It won 4 Oscars at the time for Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress. The supporting actress won and only had 8 minutes of screen time, the shortest screen time ever for Best Supporting Actress, and won Best Original Screenplay. It's considered one of the greatest screenplays of all time. It's so good. It's so timely of the 70s, but again, like I said, I've come to the conclusion that we're just repeating like the same steps.
Yeah.
And so I actually want to note Roger Ebert reviewed this, said it was a fantastic film at the time. In the year 2000, he rewatched the film and added it to his list of great movies, his favorite films. And what he said was, like, this film was like a prophecy. When Shavsky created Howard Beale, how could he have imagined Jerry Springer, Howard Stern, and the World Wrestling Federation? And basically he just said, like, this was perfect. Like, all of the stops were just pulled and executed so well. This is, like I said, this is one of my front runner films like of all time. The first episode of Better Call Saul uses part of the quote from that epic monologue.
Oh,
Damn.
shit, when he storms the boardroom to confront Howard Hamlin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
What's the quote again?
I'm not going to use the quote right now because you have to see it to
Okay.
fully get the vibe of it. It is, honestly, if you are watching any of the films that I picked right now, please go and see this movie. It's so incredible. It's so good. Ugh.
I think you may have sold me on it. That sounds really good.
Yeah. I'm pretty sold as well.
Maybe
Let's cut you off though. That's like 15 minutes. No, I don't know.
No, we're good.
Yeah,
No, you're good though. literally can't speak highly
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
So go
That
ahead.
sounds
your
really
last
good.
film.
Oh man, that's a tough act to follow. Okay, so my last movie is actually the one I'm the most excited to tell you guys about. So it's from 1998, and it's actually from Canada.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's
1998
Sure.
Canada.
Is it Cube or the
no,
Cube?
no,
Okay.
I've never heard of that.
All right.
You haven't seen The Cube?
I haven't seen it either. It's I was kind of thinking about it for a horror movie in
I
October.
did. I watched that when I was way too young to be watching
Nice.
I feel like you watched a lot of movies when you were
it.
way too young to see
I did.
them.
I was introduced early.
Actually, I think we all did. Now that I think about it.
yeah.
I remember sleeping over at your place when I was like 8 years old and watching Indiana Jones and the
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost
For my
Ark.
birthday.
Yeah, and I had to be sent home when all their faces melted. But anyways,
That's pretty traumatic, but
yeah. So anyways, this movie's called Last Night, and here's the premise.
I've never heard of it.
Here's the premise. It's 6 p.m. and the world is going to end at midnight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, and do we know how it's going to end? Or is it just like indiscriminate, the world is going to end?
So here's the thing. The movie never really gives you a clear answer how the world's going to end, but the premise is all of humanity has known for the last 2 months that the world is going to end at this date at this time.
Cool.
So
1998.
1998.
Okay.
So it precedes Y2K then.
Yeah. So fun fact, there was some French international film company or film conglomerate, and they put out a challenge to 10 different countries to produce 10 different films about the turn of the millennium. If you study history, you learn that whenever we're approaching the end of a century, there's always tons of anxiety about what's going to happen. And Y2K was part of that. So
That's so irrationally human.
yeah. This number is climbing a digit higher. I don't like it. So, yeah, anyways, so Don McKellar is a famous Canadian screenwriter, director, and actor. Actually, fun fact, do you guys remember Odd Job Jack from the Comedy Network?
Yes, that name does sound familiar.
So he was the starring character in Odd Job Jack, Don McKellar. Okay, so he wrote this film called Last Night, and honestly, I watched it 10 years ago in film school, and honestly, it might be one of my favorite movies. Like,
wow.
I have seen him in Blindness.
yes, I think he wrote and starred in it. I don't know that he directed it, but
It's interesting to see Sandra Oh in this as well.
That's right.
I did
as
notice that
Sandra,
too.
Yeah.
that's right. So the whole deal is Don McKellar, the actor and director and writer, he plays a guy named Patrick Wheeler who basically something's up with this guy. The world is ending and he doesn't really seem to give a shit. You kind of get the sense that the world is kind of already ended for him, and you find out why later on in the movie. So anyways, he ends up going over to his parents' house to celebrate what's essentially Christmas. He goes there with his sister and his sister's boyfriends, and his parents have rewrapped all these Christmas gifts they'd given them over the years. Kind of like, some kind of in memoriam thing. And he, much to the contention of his family, he's told them that he wants to spend the end of the world alone. So after dinner, he's going to go back to his apartment and the world's going to end all around him. So, but anyways, as he goes back to his apartment, he finds Sandra Oh sitting on his doorstep. Her character is also named Sandra, funnily enough.
Yeah.
So what happened is, what's really interesting about this movie is that it takes place in Toronto, and this is more like Mardi Gras than Mad Max. Like,
Cool.
There's rioting in the streets, and the streets are dangerous, but it's not like leather-clad assholes riding around.
Right.
Like, in the start of the movie, Sandra Oh pops into a looted grocery store to pick up some final things for her final meal with her husband. And while she's in there, some hooligans come and flip her car over.
Wow.
So, again, it's almost like New Year's Eve as opposed to the end of the world. Like,
Right.
there's kind of Patrick makes some kind of throwaway reference to, all the rioting and looting that went on when the world first dropped. But again, it's more a big party is going on as opposed to everyone's being shot dead in the streets. Anyways, he finds Sandra Oh sitting on his doorstep. She needs to get across town to be with her husband for the end of the world, and he's kind of forced to help her. This movie is a dark comedy, There's also kind of this haunting sadness about this movie. Like, there's this very kind of poignant scene that I think about a lot where Sandra Oh's car has just been flipped over. So she finds a bus and she gets on it, and there's a woman and her daughter. And the daughter's like 12, and she's like, I want to get my ears pierced. Like, this sucks. And her mom is just like, just calm down, honey. Just be quiet. And Sandra Oh gets up. She's like, how long have you guys been waiting? And the woman says, for what? And Sandra says, the driver. And the woman says, what driver? So they're just sitting on this bus waiting. So,
Wow.
Okay, yeah, I see.
But what's interesting about this movie is how all these different characters are reacting to the end of the world. And one of the themes seems to be how people are kind of failing to adapt to these new situations. So this movie actually stars David Cronenberg.
Wow.
As an actor. Yeah.
Cool.
He plays a guy named Duncan who works for the gas company. And when we first meet him, he's going down a list of names, calling customers, thanking them for their business over the years, and promising them that the gas will stay on to the end of the world. And again, there's the lady on the bus, and it's how people are kind of, in some ways, failing to adapt to what's going on. But as opposed to that, there's also some characters who are just kind of living out their wildest dreams. So there's one character I have to talk about. His name's Craig, and he's actually played by a guy who appeared on Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, I loved that show.
That was connected to another movie tonight, and I forget which one.
So his name is Callum Keith Rennie. He played, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Leo Ben Connoy on Battlestar Galactica. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, Leo, yeah.
Yeah. So he plays a guy named Craig. He's Patrick's best friend. And basically, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but I'm just going to go into it. When he found out the world was ending, he went into his kitchen and he covered the walls with all the different types of sex acts he'd always wanted to try. When we first meet him, he's like bringing a black woman over to his apartment. And he's like, do you want drinks? I have drinks. And she's like, no, that's okay. And he's like, listen, I just want you to know, like, I didn't just invite you over because you're black. I think you're very cool and very beautiful. And she just went, you're very sweet, but that's okay. I just need to have an orgasm today. And then there's another scene where he invites his old high school French teacher over to bone. So this guy's just living his best life. Anyways, the real heart of the movie is the relationship between Patrick and Sandra Oh, and how Patrick is very closed off. He's kind of an abrasive asshole, and he's very closed off, and he doesn't really seem to care that the world's ending. But like, we find out as the movie goes on that something kind of happened to him that made him this way.
Right.
And can he kind of open up right at the end of the world?
You know what film this is actually reminding me of is Seeking a Friend at the End of the World. I don't know if either of you have seen that with Steve Carell.
I've heard of it with Keira Knightley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've
It
seen
sounds like a similar tone. It's kind of a comedy, but it's also very poignant.
The end of the world.
Yeah, and just exploring that idea. Like, I love the hook. I love the idea of it. It's been used a few times.
It's interesting because, like, okay, like, obviously we don't know that the world's going to end at 12 p.m., but it's poignant because we obviously all know intellectually that we're going to die.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I watched this movie with my roommate, Pettin, and he said, I think this movie is all about, like, how you shouldn't attach yourself to anything because nothing's permanent. And I said, actually, I think this movie is just all about how you should, as cheesy as it might sound, you should just live your life the way you want to live it.
Yeah.
Like, and in some ways, like Craig, this guy who's on his sex bender, he kind of has this throwaway line where he's like, he kind of implies like, there's so much stuff I wanted to do, but I was always too scared to do, and now I'm just going for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, this movie's really funny, but there is some like hauntingly poignant moments. Anyway, really good movie. Out of the 3 movies I picked, it's definitely my favorite.
Awesome.
It's a very tight hour and a half.
Nice.
I love it.
Doesn't overstay its welcome. Good one.
All right. I think that's it then. I think we wrap her up there. So I'm going to just mention all the movies again. So Jason, you picked genre, so you did crime. Dial M for Murder, Chinatown, and Natural Born Killers. I had director. I picked the great Sidney Lumet, whose name should be on your list now if it wasn't before. Fantastic movies. He had Dog Day Afternoon, The Hill, and Network. Mike, you rounded this off with Wildcard. You chose apocalypse movies that are foreign films that also are different in tone. you picked Melancholia, 28 Days Later, and Last Night.
That's right.
So, I guess we should say where each one is streaming really quick. So, Dog Day Afternoon is streaming on Crave Stars or Stars through Amazon Prime. And then The Hill and Network actually aren't streaming anywhere. They can be rented anywhere, though. Honestly, I'm probably going to buy Network at some point because I loved it so much. So, it's one of my favorite movies of this year.
Melancholia, I just rented on YouTube, but it looks like it's streaming on AMC Plus. Last Night, it looks like it's on Prime.
Ooh, awesome.
I don't know if I should say this, but I found a bootleg copy on YouTube for free, so hopefully that hasn't been taken down yet.
It is on Prime and CBC Gem.
Oh, yeah. Good for you, CBC. You're getting into the streaming wars. 28 Days Later, surprisingly enough, is streaming on Disney Plus.
Cool.
I'm always
awesome.
surprised when I
watch that soon.
see adult content on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
It's just
There was something I was watching recently, Disney Plus, and I was like, why is this on here?
Solar Opposites is on Disney Plus.
Yep.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be there.
So Natural Born Killers is not streaming anywhere. You can rent it on Apple TV, Google Play, Cineplex, Microsoft, YouTube. Chinatown is streaming on Hoopla and Paramount Plus, as well as like the Prime Video version of Paramount Plus. And then Dial M for Murder, streaming on Tubi, which we've talked about before. It has ads. It's like a free movies and TV platform. And then you could also rent it on all the standard platforms.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's close her off. So, who do you think won? Who won the movie draft? Which movies are you most excited about out of each other's? So I'm gonna say, while you guys are thinking, Last Night hooks me. I'm really interested in that film. I think it's really cool. I'd never heard of it before. Chinatown is like top 10 on my list right now.
Yeah.
I almost have watched it like 3 times. It's a tough one between you two, who I think.
Man, you gotta watch Natural Born Killers too.
Yeah.
It might not quite be for me, but I'm going to check it out.
Man, it is fucked.
I don't know if I can pick a winner, but I will say Natural Born Killers and Network. I'm very interested.
Yeah, like
those are ones I will probably go out of my way to watch.
I'm gonna rewatch Melancholia probably.
Okay.
Just because I want to see all 3, like the trilogy.
The Depression trilogy?
At
Yeah.
least I have to watch the first one, whatever it was.
Antichrist.
Antichrist.
I've read about it, and it sounds more horrifying than all of them.
Yeah. Man, so just on that point, Nymphomaniac, extremely fucked. Well done, though. Well done.
I think that describes all of his movies.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, that's where I love where you went, because I really want to watch 28 Days Later. I think I watched, like, a little bit of it when I was 14 or 16 or something like that, but I don't remember it well enough, and I didn't know Cillian Murphy, like, the way that I do now, because he's one of my, like, top actors.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
I definitely want to rewatch or watch that. And then Network sounds amazing.
Yeah. You did a good job selling that.
Yeah, and you picked such a great director. Like that, like to pick the actor's director.
Yeah.
It was fucking smart.
And none of us had heard him before.
Yeah.
And oh, man, I can't understate enough.
I
These
think-
movies are incredible.
I think that's the right angle to choose from, because, yeah, it's an underappreciated gem. This guy.
Absolutely. And it's a little bit timing on some of these movies. Like, some of it is great. She's got overshadowed by other films.
Yeah.
But they hold up, let me tell you. I think we did great. I think we did a great job. I
think we all did good.
The audience lets us know which movies they watched, what they've seen before, and let us know how we did.
Honestly, I think it was 9 great movies that were talked about.
Except Melancholia.
Well,
No, it's good. I just...
oh, fuck. Ah!
And now for our sponsor.
It's Star Wars.
Yeah. Guys, good news. We've been bought by Disney.
Yeah.
We've been acquired.
All right. I think we got to wrap it up there. You guys are giving me a lot of footage to edit. So
Yeah, get to work, bitch.
yeah. Let us know who won the
you.
draft. What movies are you most excited to watch, or have you watched any of these
And
films?
if there's a movie that you really like and want us to do a full episode on, maybe sound off in the comments.
Absolutely. It's going to be Network.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be Network.
No, seriously, we're doing that at some point. It was the greatest movie I've
Yeah.
ever watched.
I mean, we're in your
so down
house,
for each
so
of them, yeah.
All right, have a good one, everyone.
All right, see you.
bye-bye.